Question: are you part of the global ungodly society failing to overcome their adulterous hearts? Know this: multiple millions will be taken captive to godless nations. Verse 9, then in the nations where they have been carried captive, those who escape will remember me, how I have been grieved by their adulterous hearts, which have turned away from me, and by their eyes, which have lusted after their idols. They will loathe themselves for the evil they have done, and for all their detestable practices. Ezekiel chapter 6, verse 9, New International Version. We need to overcome sin and condemn sin in our hearts and minds for what it is: sin. The transgression of God's law makes everyone adulterous, and it is an unfaithful addiction against what is right. All wrongdoing is sin, and everyone on the face of the earth is addicted to sin, which makes us all adulterous. We all indulge in sin and must overcome and fight against our nature, which is that universal bad behavior of mankind. We must do everything within our power to rid bad behavior from our lives. We treat sin like it's some mere medical condition that we somehow succumb to. Many people act as if sin just came upon them without warning, like food poisoning, and all they need to do is go to the doctor and get treated for it. This is the asinine way we think in our self-made sick society. Many of us have heard the heart-wrenching stories of those who have become addicted to various types of drugs, even over-the-counter prescription drugs. Of course, some are more destructive than others. Those are usually the ones that cause addiction sooner. I heard a tragic story of a girl who was addicted to crack cocaine. She related how she became addicted the very first time. Sitting in a circle with a bunch of her foolish friends, they passed this cocaine around, inhaling it as you would a cigarette. As it passed on from one person to another, and each took a drag, she remembered something very frightening. As soon as the drug came to her and she put it to her lips, sucking it in, her mind was gone. As it went around the circle, she explained she had only a single thought, a calculation of how long it would be until each person in the circle took their turn and it reached her again. She was hooked on the very first sinful try, her very first wretched experience with one suck on that poison destroyed her entire life. Just a little more time than it takes a blink of an eye. All of her hopes, all of her dreams, everything she desired for her life was now destroyed, sitting in that wretched circle with her so-called friends. Now, what does that tell you? It should tell all of us we need a better circle of friends. Verse 33, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Verse 34, come back to your senses as you ought and stop sinning, for there are some who are ignorant of God. I say this to your shame. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33 to 34, New International Version. Book banner picture displays Fox News Channel with host Brian Wilson showing a picture of the Vice President giving a speech with a caption which reads, stay close to your parents. Always surround yourself with well-chosen friends. Host Brian Wilson comments, Vice President Dick Cheney returned to his high school alma mater in Casper, Wyoming last night to give a commencement speech. He told the 340 students graduating from Natrona County High School to stay focused on their work, to stay close to their parents and always surround themselves with well-chosen friends. The vice president also stated you should choose your friends carefully. They have a big influence on what kind of person you become. So when you see good qualities in people, things you admire, habits you'd like to pick up, principles you respect, keep those people close at hand in your life. In many ways, when you choose your friends, you choose your future. Age of 42 author. Wise words from the vice president. Even wiser words come from the eternal. Verse 13. Therefore, put away from yourselves the evil person. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 13. New King James Version. A friend of mine answered my questions regarding his experience. He grew up in the church, learning the ways of the eternal. Leaving many years ago, he is now trying to make his way back. I asked this prodigal son, how do drugs addict you? How does it feel? Why do you crave it so badly? Why can't you simply stop? And why it is so hard once you start to get away from it. He told me it's like sex, like having sex in your mind. Not like the physical action of sex, but the exhilarating feeling of sex in your mind. A thought process takes over and controls all of your feelings, channeling them into one area of your brain. For lack of a more suitable term, you can simply call it mind masturbation. It's a craving that never leaves you. You're never satisfied enough, and the more you take it, the less satisfied you become, because your craving for that satisfaction increases. But the level of that satisfaction does not. You're always chasing that very first high you received on your very first try, which was in many cases the very first time you became addicted in the first place. This wretched addiction pattern increases, literally taking over your life. All your plans for the day, the week, the month, the year are simply shattered. You don't care about your friends. You don't even care about your family. You don't care about your job. You don't care about your house. In many cases, you don't even care about money until the time you need some to buy more drugs to satisfy your destructive addiction. And take note, those of you who continue to revel in your sins, you're not just masturbating your foolish mind away, you're destroying your brain cells on a consistent basis. Every time you indulge in drug destruction, you're carrying out suicide cell anemia. That's right, you're committing suicide with your own brain cells, cells which do not regenerate. When assassinated, killed purposely by you, they're dead forever. Like that famous powerful commercial which showed a single egg representing your brain and throwing it into a frying pan, frying your brain, cooking it to death. After the brain frying demonstration, the profound question to those who still have doubts, those still deaf and dumb, the commercial asked, "Any questions?" How stupid and self-centered can we be? So unbelievably drug-crazed, addicted, and overpowered by self-gratification, those addicted don't care about anything, not even their own lives. Book banner displays a documentary called Intervention by A&E. Chronicles a woman heavily addicted to drugs. Age of 42 author. I recently watched this very sad documentary called Intervention. It's about a girl named Allison who was a 3-time White House intern. Then she met her future boyfriend who introduced her to drugs which helped destroy her future. Allison is a sobering example of how adulterous addictions destroy all we hold dear. A sadistic insanity takes over. In this documentary, Allison stole drugs from her sick father, drugs he needed to help keep him alive. Allison admitted her selfish addictions drove her father to his alien condition in the first place. Not caring enough about her father or the rest of her family, she seemed to care more about her drug pusher boyfriend. His picture displaying the enormous cockroach right by his lips tells you all you need to know about him and her noxious choice in friends. Unless we get control over our addictions, wrestling back our life to be the governor in charge of our life, we forfeit our right to rule, and a new governor is elected in place to rule over us. His first name is drug. His last name is death. Sinful acts lead to sinful insanity. Note, to all who remain addicted, consider you have elected over your life a mad dictator to rule over you like a vicious coup d'etat. You've allowed a foreign substance to rape your mind, take over your life, and enslave you. The next high you experience might be the one that literally takes your life. Perhaps you may be blessed and simply fall, hitting rock bottom. Bottoming out usually entails a life-threatening overdose, with the paramedics coming to resuscitate you from death. If so, the blessed hand of God was upon you, giving you a second chance. Possibly when you awaken in the hospital from your overdose, then you may reflect on your life and take time to meditate on your destructive behaviors. Again, what type of drug or what kind of addiction does not matter. Any destructive behavior can take your life. Gambling, drinking, never thinking, overeating, not eating enough, bad hygiene, chronic laziness, procrastination, any bad behaviors which you do not control will control you and become an addiction. Sexual addictions, one of the worst adulterous behaviors, is also the most common. Sex is the strongest urge in the human body. If not regulated, ruled by the laws of the Creator, this sin can ruin or take your life. Every addiction literally comes down to prostitution, whether you are buying to get prostitutes or selling yourself as a prostitute. That's the addiction we all must overcome. When we indulge in any addiction, we become an adulteress, all the while deluding ourselves, disregarding our unfaithful behavior. Verse 3, for the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. Verse 4, but in the end she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Verse 5, her feet go down to death, her steps lead straight to the grave. Verse 6, she gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths are crooked, but she knows it not. Verse 7, now then, my son, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Verse 8, keep to the path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house. Verse 9, lest you give your best strength to others, and your years to one who is cruel. Verse 10, lest strangers feast on your wealth, and your toil enrich another man's house. Verse 11, at the end of your life you will groan. When your flesh and your body are spent, verse 12, you will say, how I hated discipline, how my heart spurned correction. Verse 13, I would not obey my teachers or listen to my instructors. Verse 14, I have come to the brink of utter ruin in the midst of the whole assembly. Proverbs chapter 5, verse 3 to 14 New International Version. Rest. Meditate and reflect. 33. Salah. Think on this. Question. Since the Creator commands us to overcome ourselves and the world, are you a friend of this world? Do you love and continue to indulge in all its sin-filled adulterous practices? If so, an enemy are you to God? Verse 4. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world is hatred towards God? Anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. James chapter 4, verse 4. New International Version. This is what it means to be an adulteress. This is what it means to be unfaithful to your Creator. This is how you completely fall from grace. Without God's grace, you can never fulfill God's will, not even your own. This is when you have become an utter, complete failure. This is what you should know, whether you are 42 or 102. You must overcome you.